So let me get started on a lighter note. Minister Jaishankar and I have met many times over these years since my foreign minister days, but he has stayed external affairs minister throughout these many years. I have changed my hat several times. So I first from foreign minister, then as a candidate lobbying to become a head of a UN agency, came here to support, ask for for India's support, lost miserably, and in hindsight, I'm so glad I lost that because then I could take up the opportunity to work with Asia Society, which is a small but a very mighty nonprofit organization whose mission is to deepen understanding and bridges to Asia and to deal with the challenges that are unfolding in Asia. Very proud of the work that's being done by Asia Society and Asia Society policy colleagues here in India, which is to deepen understanding, highlight India's place in the regional scheme of things and the global scheme of things. And I very much hope that that is of unique value to the Indian government, Indian business leadership, and Indian key players in every sector of society. As I said, Minister, you are still the External Affairs Minister, probably one of the longest serving foreign ministers by now. No? One of the
others much longer.
But I think
I'm not even competing with some of them.
I know, but probably the most widely admired, I have to say. Perhaps I'm subjective because my work is looking at Asia, and certainly in the Asian scheme of things, Minister Jaishankar stands very tall. And so I think from my perspective, most widely admired is a right description. You came to the GA last year and visited us and gave a wonderful speech at Asia Society. And I have to say that the video of the full session is the most watched YouTube program by far of that session, and it continues to be today. So a very articulate advocate of India's place in the global scheme of things. And this at a time when India is rising and with heft. And I always say this is a good period to be India, to be Indians. And under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi, great transformation taking place as a nation with reforms and an articulate face of that country in the form of Minister Jaishankar. So just to say, very delighted and honored to have another opportunity to engage with the Foreign Minister in my capacity as Asia Society President now. But to set the context for our conversation today, I think it's a challenging context, we all know. Asia, in the age of geopolitical churn, and we use that term churn. I didn't decide, but I think the team here decided this is a period where that expression churn is appropriate. It's not just change, but change that is really gets to the fundamental levels of geopolitics, international relations, global governance, and so on and so forth. It's been fluid for many years. But then you had also conflict, interstate conflict, flaring up in the form of the war in Ukraine. Technological competition heating up. The fight over resources also heating up. And so it's become an age of tough competition all around, and we know that the AI is the issue of the day. Then, of course, most recently, we have President Trump returning to office and taking a very unconventional approach to the pending issues of peace and conflict of the day. So you know, his agenda clearly is to realize MAGA, to make America great again, and project that in the global stage. So there's the idea that there is a paradigm shift taking place in the world, in the global order. And certainly from a country like South Korea and Japan, which are security allies of the United States, that expression seems quite appropriate. This is a period of paradigm shift. But as a country that has held to this position of non-alignment as a core positioning of your foreign policy, does it feel like a paradigm shift moment to you, or is that appropriate for you?
Before I get to that, first of all, let me say what a pleasure it is to see you back here, to welcome you back here. And I think we worked well together when you were foreign minister. And whether it was our own bilateral ties or your great experience on the multilateral field, I think I look back on that period in a very positive, with a lot of good memories. Your question, is it a paradigm shift? Look, I think there's an objective reality out there. What yours or mine or somebody else's reality, relationship is to the reality, doesn't change the reality. It just makes us see that reality in a different way. So yes, South Korea is a treaty ally, but whether you are a treaty ally or a non-treaty or a non-ally or, you know, utterly agnostic, uninvolved power, you still have to recognize the fundamentals of what is shifting. And now you can call it a churn, you can call it a paradigm shift, you can use even stronger words, but I think something very fundamental is shifting in the world order. And what is shifting is that the United States, which has been for the last 80 years the most powerful country and the biggest economy, and something much more than that. A country which in many ways underwrote global rules and practices, which fashioned many of the organizations and understandings. If the United States starts to change its terms of dealing with the world, its approach to dealing with the world, it's almost, you know, it's not almost, it is actually the foundation of the order which is shifting. Now, I use the term churn myself, so I compliment your team for picking.
We take it from you.
For this, because, you know, the word churn kind of signifies that you're going deep down,
Yes.
that it's not something on a surface. Exactly. It's not something which is going to come, go, and, you know, we'll carry on. I think the world will never be the same again.
Exactly.
So there is something very deep, very profound, very consequential which is happening right now. And yes, again, I think there are many other events and trends which have fed into it. You referred to the conflict, the Russia-Ukraine conflict. I would still argue that the shift in the American position is a much more fundamental happening than the conflict, than the Russia-Ukraine conflict, however serious that is. There is another trend which precedes that, which is, I would say, the rise of China, because in many ways, I think that has driven or fed into the shift in American attitudes.
Yes.
There is a renewed, sharper sense of geopolitics. I think the changed American view of globalization has a lot to do with the rise of China. Not just the rise of China. I think you can see that in a way, between US and the world and between the West and the non-West, there has also been a shift in terms of balances and relative weight. So in some ways, we in India have also contributed to the dynamism of this evolution. And so have a lot of other countries. I mean, if you look at the 20 biggest economies, clearly these are very different from what they were 20 years ago, even more so than what they were 30, 40 years ago. So you had, you know, the way I would describe it is there's a series of trend lines. Then there are certain sharp events. You know, COVID is an event, Russia-Ukraine conflict is an event, what's happening in the Middle East is an event. I would put, you know, this rebalancing, the fact that you have the relative weight of economies are shifting, and with it the relative weight of the political influences. Technology is also both a trend and, in a way, and it's not an event, but it's a, you know, there is a sharpness about some of it, particularly the AI bit. So you have trends, you have events, but most important, you have the foundation of the global order actually at some point saying, you know, guess what, I've had enough of the order which I myself helped to invent, and now I think I'm going to set about it in a very different way.
And what does that mean for Asia? Asia is big, it's growing in terms of its weight and heft in the global scheme of things. This is where wealth is being generated, new wealth is being generated. But there is also diversity and divisiveness within the diversity that is Asia. And you mentioned China's rise, I think, is certainly part of that challenge. But looking at the Asian continent overall, what does this mean, that churn of the foundation of geopolitics for Asia? How is Asia going to evolve?
Well, you know, I know you call the Asia society, but that doesn't mean all of Asia has a similar position. I think within Asia, there are actually a very, very diverse, very complex set of reactions. I think different countries would, each one, I mean, exactly your starting point. You know, those in Asia who are treaty allies will look at it differently. Those who have what they perceive to be very sharp competitive edges to the relationship with US will look at it differently. Those who believe that, well, maybe in all these changes, there are opportunities lurking out there, which if you can exploit it intelligently, may offer you possibilities, will look at it differently. I think some of the, you know, energy producers in the Gulf may look at it very differently. So I would say, really, it's a very bespoke answer you're looking for. I think everybody would really be kind of coming at it very, very differently. And in a way, we have all of the above. I mean, there would be each part, not just of Asia, but each part of the world would be gauging this foundational shift from its particular relationship to the foundation and to the larger environment, and calculating, saying, you know, what are the challenges and opportunities, what are the costs and benefits, what are the risks and possibilities in this. So I think the diversity of Asia does not allow me to give you a single uniform answer. Clearly there will be, you know, strategic, I would say, in a sense, security shifts. Clearly there will be technology, you know, interplays out there. In many ways, a lot of what is driving the shift will also impact some parts of Asia. I mean, we are looking today at more industrial policy, at tariff wars, if you would, tariff impositions at least. You are looking at much stronger export controls. So it's not just a foundation which is shifting. That shifting foundation has a worldview which is significantly different from the earlier foundation on which some parts of Asia particularly profited enormously and may now no longer do so.
And in this mix, I think India is looked upon as having had a very agile, pragmatic approach to this churn.
Thank you very much.
Minister, you were there at the inauguration of President Trump to lay the foundation for what turned out to be a very successful visit by the Prime Minister to Washington and came out with a statement just looking at the outcome. It's so substantive. It just touches so many aspects of this growing bilateral relationship between the United States and India, including now cooperation in the defense sector. And agreement to work towards a trade, not a free trade agreement, but a trade agreement nonetheless. I understand that the US delegation is here to kickstart that negotiation. So I remember that moment many years ago when the RCEP was being finalized and the summit meetings that gathered to finalize this and signed on to it. And Prime Minister Modi was the one who could not sign on to it.
Correct.
And that was a disappointment for the group. But I think from the Prime Minister's point of view, you understood the difficulties of signing on to that at that particular moment. But since then, there has been many bilateral trade agreements worked out, and now you're working towards one with the United States. How do you see this unfolding, and does this mean a fundamental shift in India's trade policy toward openness rather than the traditional, protect my industry kind of a position?
Let me, for the sake of clarity, separate the questions into two parts. One was going to Washington and what did we agree on, and the other part, the trade set of issues. When we went to Washington in February, when Prime Minister went, and the discussions that he had with President Trump, I think overall our assessment was that we saw many changes which were, which suited us, or which in some ways formed a convergence on which we could build upon. Let me give you a few examples. Let's take defense. We saw a president who was much more open and much more active in terms of building a security defense partnership, and much more forthcoming about American technology possibilities. Our own experience in the first term, in his first term, was that he personally took an interest in ensuring that some of the platforms which we had an interest in, which we wanted, which were sort of meandering their way somewhere through American bureaucracy, that he stepped in and made sure that this happened. This time around, we certainly heard a recognition that there has to be a better way of engaging partners. If there are countries who respect and recognize the value of American technology and want to acquire it, and there should be easier pathways than the current one. So we certainly expect a more substantial level, higher quality defense relationship as a result. A second area of interest for us was energy. For a country like India, whose imports are overwhelming, how to make sure that there's a stable, reasonable, predictable energy environment is something which is crucial for our long-term growth and development. Now, we saw a president who clearly had an interest in ensuring that energy availability was more, energy flows were more diverse, that countries like India could have more choice than we currently do. We, had some decades ago started, about a decade ago, started importing LNG from the US. But for various reasons, the business stayed at a certain level. We have interest in increasing it because, the US is a very, very stable supplier.
Yes.
So we found from the energy perspective a very positive administration. I would also say we had a good discussion on the tech world. I think there was a recognition that because, big tech is today, the success of big tech is essential to make America great again. There is a connection between the two. And I think big tech recognizes the importance of mobility and talent flows and the importance of partnerships, because obviously everything in the tech world can't happen in America. So how do you create reliable supply chains? How do you have trusted vendors, trusted partners, transparent partners? I think these were issues on which again we saw a great deal of understanding and positivity. On trade, we had a very open discussion. And the result of that discussion was that the Prime Minister and the President agreed that we would conclude, you rightly said, not a free trade agreement, but a bilateral trade agreement by fall this year. And that is what is currently under discussion. We have a team here, by the way, they're not it's not that they are kicking off the discussion. My colleague, the trade minister, the commerce minister was in the US last month. And since then, actually, we've been working the trade account through virtual means. So there's a very active and intense trade discussion going on at this point of time. So this brings me to the trade part of what you asked. Look, we did not sign RCEP for this reason. Through the RCEP discussions, we continuously sought protections and safeguards because we had apprehensions about a surge of imports, essentially spurred by non-market and subsidy support. We didn't get it. The RCEP partners did not take our concerns seriously. And at the end of the day, finally, forgive my saying it, presented us with a take it or leave it situation. And we left it. And I think today, if you ask people, at that time when we did it, perhaps opinions were a bit more divided. Today, I think there's a much stronger consensus that not joining RCEP for a country like India was a wise decision because, see, the nature of RCEP is a supply chain architectured system where rules of origin have very limited meaning. I mean, they can't be verified in the way in which it used to be before. So the way the flows would come at us, already we are today struggling with some very serious adverse trade balances. There are deep concerns in this country about the hollowing out of our industrial capacity. We believe that we are getting, again, a lot of unfair competition out of economies east of India. For sake of diplomacy, I will not take names. I think all these were factors into our thinking.
And getting back to the, this energy in defense industry, security cooperation with the United States, traditionally for defense industry cooperation, your main partner was Russia. And that was a point of tension, as I recall, with the United States. But the relationship between the United States and Russia has taken a dramatic turn. So has that tension now been eased?
Well, I am not sure I would quite call it a tension. India was importing defense equipment from the United States till 1965. It was the United States which cut off India in 1965. It was the United States thereafter which did not resume sale of defense equipment to India from 1965 till 2006, barring one exception. So, it wasn't I mean, if India turned to Soviet Union and thereafter to Russia, to a large extent, it was a situation also created by the United States, which actually consciously had a policy of not supplying military equipment to India. So if they didn't want to sell it to us, I mean, that cannot then become a complaint against us. So they changed their policy in 2006, 2005, 2006, and then it resumed. So, and now it was not that we bought only from Russia. In that same period, if you look, we bought planes from UK, we bought from France, we bought equipment from Germany, we bought from Israel. So we had, the Indian military or the Indian defense system would like at any given time to have multiple options and pick what it considers to be in its interest. The US took itself out of this option game. It brought itself back into the option game. If you are now an option, it's a multipolar world, you've got to compete.
Your point about multipolar world, when you came to Asia Society in the fall last year, you said multipolar Asia is necessary for both the Asian century and for a multipolar world.
Yes.
Right? The world has changed rather dramatically since then. Has that idea of a multipolar world, multipolar Asia, crystallized, become more concrete, changed? How many poles are you talking about?
Let's go to the multipolar world first and then Asia later. What is the underpinning? What's the basis for this concept? It is that the world is fundamentally diverse. There will be, multiple centers of production, of consumption, of political influence, of capabilities. So inherently, the world should be multipolar. Because if you have 200 odd countries, like 200 minus countries in the world, surely it cannot be that one country or two countries or three countries have the right or frankly even the ability to control the 190 odd countries. So to me, you can say when we didn't use the word multipolar, the earlier conversations, we are actually looking at a very a distorted phase in the world's history, which was coming out of colonialism, then sliding into the Cold War, where a few countries of the colonial period and the Cold War period asserted their hegemony by actually making that hegemonic circumstance look like a normal. So, in fact, we should have been asking ourselves, we are 200 of us. Why are 2 or 3 countries, how do they have the right and how do they have the ability to control the others? So at some stage, the democratization of the world started happening. It started happening because as colonialism ended, other countries picked up their economies. Economies grew, politics capabilities grew along with it. So over a period of time, I would argue normalcy is returning. A multipolar world is the norm. It is actually the true statement of the diversity of 190 something countries in the world. A unipolar, bipolar, limited polar is actually a distortion.
So multipolar in the sense of not 3, not 4, but many.
Yes, many, because, and again, it's important because often the reality and frankly the viability, the utility, the merits, the virtue of having an Asia which is multipolar as well is sometimes not that sharply realized outside Asia. So it is, if you can't say the rest of the world should reflect its diversity, and by the way, Asia should somehow be exempt from it. Asia is actually the most diverse continent.
Yes.
If any part of the world should be multipolar, it should start with Asia.
But you also said, yes, there are multiple poles of agency and influence, but your statement I remember is that the future of Asia will very much be influenced by the bilateral relations between the two big powers in Asia, India and China, right? And I think that has been your
No, it's not an original statement of mine. I mean,
But-
I think a
so
lot of
we
other
have
people
to-
have been saying it for 50 years.
But we have to then discuss India-China.
Sure.
As you said, it's a difficult one. There was a military clash that's now been managed. You said it was de-escalation going into disengagement the last time you spoke. I heard you spoke on this.
The other way around.
around. Okay. So how do you see this key bilateral relations unfolding under this geopolitical context of churn? And how does India exercise its tremendous agency to lead in a way that strengthens the peace and dynamics for peace and co-prosperity in Asia and the world?
We had a war with China in '62. It took us 14 years after that to send back an ambassador. It took us 12 more years for a Prime Minister of India to visit that country. And from 1988, there was a certain understanding between India and China on the basis of which the relationship was rebuilt. Okay. We obviously couldn't solve the problems, most of all the boundary issue, but we built a relationship with, managed it. There were dialogues and negotiations going on while other parts of the relationship grew. Okay, the economic relationship grew. There were more exchanges. People went up. The rest, and even on the boundary. In fact, we had a series of agreements which laid out in great detail protocols on how to manage the boundary, how to deploy, how to ensure that something accidental doesn't happen. All the while, negotiations were going on to find a solution to the boundary issue. Now, from then, let us, if we use 1988 as a starting point, till 2020, while we had incidents along in the boundary, in the border areas, we had not actually had bloodshed. The last bloodshed was 45 years before 2020. Okay, so what happened in 2020 was actually very traumatic for the relationship. It wasn't just the bloodshed, it was the disregard of written agreements. Because this isn't a gray area we are talking about. I mean, the departure from the terms of what was agreed to was very sharp and very substantial. Now, through this period, I mean, obviously it took us, I mean, we're still dealing with some parts of this. So it's not like the issue has completely gone away. We felt that, I mean, obviously it called for a military response on India's side, which happened. There was a counter deployment by us. But we also felt that the way forward was to find a negotiated outcome, and that's what we've been trying to do since 2020. Now, the answer to your question is, we don't think this period serves the interests of either India or China. How do we benefit by having a very tense relationship with that a large number of troops out there at very hostile environment, and all the collateral damage which it has done to the relationship? Because obviously, if peace and tranquility in the border areas were disturbed, then the rest of the relationship can't go on as normal. So I mean, in terms of, I would say, principles or concepts, we have basically made 2 points, which is differences should not become disputes, and that competition should not become conflict. That we can differ on many issues.
Yes.
We do compete on many issues. But because we compete doesn't mean that there should be a conflict between us. We are very realistic about it. You know. So we know that between India and China, there will, at least in the foreseeable future, there will be issues. But there are ways of addressing those issues.
Yes.
And what happened in 2020 was not the way to address those issues. So right now, we feel that from October of last year, the relationship has seen some improvement. We are working on different aspects of it. I've met my counterpart a few times, so have my other senior colleagues. And what we are trying step by step is to see if we can rebuild, undo some of the damage which happened as a result of their actions in 2020, and we can rebuild the relationship. And we genuinely, sincerely think that this is in our mutual interest. That if one looks at that 2020 to 25, I think it was a period which did not serve them well, and it did not serve us well.
Minister, your statement that differences should not become disputes, competition should not become conflict, should be the bywords that diplomats all over the world should be exercising their craft in these very difficult days. But we have 10 minutes. The minister has to leave at 6:45 sharp. So I apologize for not giving the audience an opportunity to address questions to the minister. But we have 10 minutes, so maybe I will take 3 questions and together, and then make them short, please. Identify yourself, short questions, and we will give the rest of the time to the minister to respond. Please, sir.
Good evening. Thank you. First thing, sir, I'm a great fan of yours. And
Question, please.
yeah, sir. Thanks for
Unless you're
representing it.
questioning that.
Sir, in terms of trust framework, I just want to understand from you, sir. I represent TCS, so from the technology point of view, sir, I just wanted to, take your insights on how do you see this framework going ahead, and also addressing the key issues of workforce migration. Thank you, sir.
The tech agreement with the US, yeah. The young lady. Oh.
My name is Neha, and the question is that we've seen a significant regional integration in the last couple of years, trade integration, and a lot of organizations have sort of called out the potential on regional commitments and integration for climate change. I just wanted to get your response if that really is something that you see as a potential in today's world. It was something that we had taken for granted in maybe, world 3 months ago, but is that something that you're seeing currently as well?
Did you? Okay. Maybe we'll go to this far side with the lady in red, please.
Thank you, sir. I'm Shriparna Pathak, an Associate Professor of International Relations. So I have one question. Given the fact that in the Indo-Pacific, challenges keep increasing, there are these mullings that there'll be a Quad strategic alliance. Would India be willing to join the Quad?
Quad. So there are 3 questions. I have to be a little bit preferential. I think
I can do one thing. I can do this, and maybe given the time, maybe we can do one more round.
Okay,
huh?
great.
Okay.
Great. Please see.
So, I owe you. Let me. The first question. Look, here's the reality of the tech world. There is a very sharp polarization in the tech world, and it's from the nature of this particular data-based tech world that we are talking about. And we saw this build, I'd say, in the last 10 years, it was a very intense debate in telecom, for example, but I think it's now pervaded well beyond. When we come to, semiconductors, AI, etc., we are going to see a very strong national security filter, which countries are going to put in terms of who they do business with. Obviously, those more powerful will be able to sort of influence the nature of the relationships more effectively. So we must understand that the kind of optionality which was there in a world of manufactured goods is not necessarily there anymore when goods have embedded data in them. Okay? So you can't now play all sides against each other all the time. There will be times when you can, there will be times when you can't. The part which will also matter is talent, because there's between the demand and the demography, there are big gaps. Almost in every significant tech playing landscape today, there are talent gaps there, which are easier easier said than done in terms of filling it. But it is today a big factor relevant to India. So when we look today, we have, even with Europe, we have something called the Trade and Technology Council, which actually at the end of the day is looking at trusted talent, and it's looking at, technology controls in a way. So we are going to get increasingly into these conversations with the US, with Europe, perhaps with some other geographies. And we'll have to see what frankly suits our national interests best and where our opportunities are the most. On your question, if I understood it rightly, what you are asking me is, in climate change, can we do regional arrangements? Did I understand you right? Yeah. Well, in a way, we have tried to think bigger than even region by tabling, by initiating the International Solar Alliance or the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure or the Global Biofuels Alliance. I think there is a lot of room for international initiatives because particularly from SIDS, the Small Island Developing States. We hear this again and again that, they're being left out, that between conferences, nobody actually pays attention to them. So how do you develop their capacities because they face some very fundamental shortcomings, but even with others. So I would argue, on the one hand, there is space for international initiatives related to climate action. I would also argue that there are regional understandings. For example, we are going to be going to BIMSTEC next week. Now, we think something like, organization like BIMSTEC should be looking at climate action. So I would, rather than say, I would put climate action as an agenda point for regional groupings, because I think today it's important enough, whether it's bilateral, international, or regional, it needs to be there. On the Quad issue, we are happy with the Quad.
That's very good.
Honorable Minister, you mentioned about from the east of our country, there has been practices that are not quite kosher, from manufacturing-driven, hollowing out other countries' manufacturing. But in the process, so much capacity has been built up and is continuing to get built up. For other countries to change the supply chain, it takes time. During this process, what is the best way investment flows and the entrepreneurs should be thinking about to deal with the massive mercantilism that's still going on and probably unstoppable.
Yes, Minister, we'll take 2 more questions. The gentleman and then the young lady, please.
So I'm J.S. Deepak, former ambassador to WTO and now with Bharti Enterprises. So there's a growing feeling that India is today prepared to do a deep trade agreement on an FTA with all countries other than China and the US. We took a courageous decision to walk out of RCEP to protect our industry. Now on the anvil of trade discussions with the US, the problem would be in the agriculture sector, sir. Part of our entitlement of tariffs are under attack, but one thing which gets neglected is that we've got these entitlements as a balance to large agriculture subsidy entitlements of the US and Europe and Japan. If the narrative is going to be to reduce tariffs in the name of reciprocal tariffs or otherwise, without adjusting subsidies, our farmers, sir, especially in poultry, dairy, food grains, are likely to be at a loss because not only does the US have a large subsidy entitlement, they have the structure where they can put all the subsidy on a single product. So US can put 12,000% of the cost of production subsidy on cotton, and that could be difficult for farmers in India.
Yes, the final question.
So was there a question there?
Yes, sir. How do we protect ourselves in the light of the coming trade negotiation?
Okay. Last question.
Hello, Soumya Mundra from JP Morgan. Does India have a 50-year strategy, and what are the most driving forces to thematically shape them?
What strategy?
50 years.
Yes.
Your question in a way flows into the next question. Yes, I think everybody in the world today is cognizant of what are the ongoing challenges today in terms of, the flow of goods and how your markets are going to deal with potential imports. Particularly where there is a market, there's a subsidy or a market distortive aspect to it. Here, in a way, is an answer. Look, by and large, India's FTAs are with countries east of India, by and large. It was with ASEAN, it was with Japan, Korea. Australia is east of India, but it's a different kind of economy. In many ways, these are also economies which are competitive. So the paradox is our early options were also the ones who are the most competitive. Now, there are reasons why that happened. Now, today we are engaged with 3 other important negotiations. FTAs with UK and EU, and a BTA, bilateral trade agreement with the US. One can look at this partly, obviously one has to look at it primarily economically, but to some extent, they are in many fields perhaps less competitive and more complementary. Not entirely so. Our colleague there flagged some issues which are real and worthy of consideration. But how to get a balance in our trading agreements is also an issue, because it's partly an issue of trade, it's partly an issue of where is potential for growth, because the economies east of us have not given us that much room for actually growth of our trade. If you look at really how we have been able to use those FTAs, it's not a great story. The expectation is maybe the economies, these for example, have greater room for untapped growth out there. So there is today, I think, a prospect of, because these agreements are very serious, they're quite advanced. Certainly UK and EU has been on the table the longest. UK has moved fairly fast. US has been very intense in the last 1 month. So we'll have to wait and see whether actually you have a new set of very big agreements which will have obviously economic consequences, but something larger than that. Deepak, on your issue, look, I think people do know, are cognizant of many of the issues which you have raised. Now, how do we do it? I mean, you know better than me, there are trade negotiators at work. You have been one yourself. That these are people who know our interests. I have every confidence that, they will negotiate what is the best possible deal for us. So I would, while noting the concern, I wouldn't prejudge the outcome. I would wait and see really what happens in terms of our ability to reach an understanding with the United States. But I don't believe that a problem should in itself be an insuperable obstacle, because there is a sound business case for a BTA with the US. I mean, bear in mind, in the first Trump administration, actually our trade negotiators and theirs spent a lot of time actually trying to do a limited deal. Part of the reason I suspect, when I look back on it, was they were very confident that they'll come back into the second term. So they didn't, push it with that kind of urgency, which they could have. And then, COVID came in between, etc. So a trade agreement with the US is actually conceptually not new. I mean, what is new is possibly the scale and, maybe the urgency with which we are doing it now. But the idea that you have such an agreement was something which was very much alive in the Trump first administration. The third question, do we have a 50-year plan? It's not an easy question to answer, but I think you have certainly today a government which thinks in terms of 2047, that's 100 years of our independence, and says, okay, can we set strategies and can we set goals and targets for where we would be in 2047? So it's not like, a plan can't come top down. I mean, to some extent, it has to be an extrapolation of where we are going. In fact, the very subjects we are discussing, I mean, if we were to be honest with ourselves, part of where we have come up short has been, we neglected manufacturing. A lot of things which should have been doing in the last 30 years, we didn't do. So how do you remedy that, put new objectives and new conditions in place? So you look, for example, at the infrastructure change which has happened in the last decade. Now, without that infrastructure change, actually you would not be competitive in terms of manufacturing. But just infrastructure is not going to make us competitive. You will also need to invest heavily in education and skills. So there's a whole, it's health and nutrition, it's education and skill, it's infrastructure, it is the kind of support that you give to your industry, it is the kind of policies you have to your agriculture, that everybody else protects their agriculture, but somehow if we do something for our farmers, it's seen as unfair. So how do you build actually a set of policies which would create a much stronger foundation for that goal? And I think right now 2047, because countries often pick a year which resonates with the population. If you tell people saying, look folks, this is where we need to be by 2047, they get it, because 2047 means something to them. And I can tell you, it's not just a slogan or a phrase in a political speech. I think in many ways different, I would say, parts of the government, of the economy, are working towards where, try to think a generation ahead.
Thank you. I see the minister's assistants looking very antsy because we're way over time. So let me just conclude here with a huge amount of thanks to you, Minister. But Inakshi will close the event's proceedings with a final word.
Thank you. On behalf of
Very
Asia
revealing.
Society and the
Very
Asia
educational,
Society
as
Policy
always.
Institute, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us here this evening. Thank you to both Ambassador Kang and to Dr. Jaishankar for lending us your insights and your time. It's clear today that in the balance of global power, economics is not separate from policy. We are more interconnected than ever. Asia's positionality in the world includes its economy, its policy, and its culture, 100 moving parts. At a time when Asia is articulating what it means to be a global power, and global relationships are changing dynamically and continuously, it's more important than ever to have the right interpreters help us understand our place in the world. Dr. Jaishankar, you're at the forefront of shaping the foreign policy of India today. And Dr. Kang, you have similarly shaped South Korea's position looking outward. And we are now so delighted to have you lead Asia Society's global footprint. Thank you very much for lending us your time and insights. We hope to continue to rely on you for your perspectives, your guidance, and your support. Equally, it's wonderful to have all of you, dignitaries, academics, thinkers, and business leaders here with us this evening. Thank you for being here, for contributing to the intellectual discourse, and for making this evening so special. My colleague Akshay and I look forward to working with you as we build Asia Society and Asia Society Policy Institute's footprint in Delhi and in India. I'd like to also acknowledge and thank Barclays, a member, friend, and supporter of Asia Society, for collaborating with us this evening, and a special vote of thanks to the Imperial Hotel for their impeccable hospitality and service. I hope to see all of you at future Asia Society convenings as well in the coming months. Please do linger on for a bit and join us for cocktails, meeting old friends and new. Thank you very much and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.